Hello, I'm Enzo, and can you beat Tiny Tina's Wonderlands with only melee? This run is exactly what it sounds like. I can only use melee weapons to damage my enemies. Naturally, I'll be playing on intense difficulty, and honestly, anything else kinda goes. I will be using all sorts of other gear, like rings, amulets, obviously class mods, and wards, of course. But this is a run I've been cooking up for quite a while, mostly because Wonderlands is unique in the Borderlands series in that melee weapons can actually be different. Instead of your assigned character melee, the melee weapons in here function very similar to guns in terms of the part system, which also means there are plenty of unique and of course legendary options as well. Starting off, my choice for class is obviously gonna be Berserker. Well, okay, I have a couple of options here, but this goes the best. It has all sorts of insanely good melee skills, and it's gonna be quite important, especially for starting out. I don't actually remember what character I had in mind to make originally, at least, but after a while of thinking and playing around, I had a perfect character. A Gale from Archery Code. Most people probably haven't heard of this game, but I really like it, and considering the sword she uses, I think she's a perfect fit. Unfortunately, there's no insanely good background to choose. The only real good option is Village Idiot, because that gives me a ton of crit damage, but reduces spell and status damage, which of course I don't care about those, since I'm not going to be using spells at all. Status damage does sting a little, especially later on. Oh well. It's a big shame there's no background that gives you Constitution, aka health and ward, which is one of the most important stats for a build like this, but the crit will be nice later on. Conveniently, the game gives you a melee extremely early on. Even though you do have a basic punch, this is going to be our actual source of damage. It's a pretty basic axe, nothing special, mostly just to show us all the stats. Of course, it's also used to introduce us to combat, and yeah, the first 3 crabs are very easy. I mean, this is the tutorial, as it should be. In the next area, I had to be a bit more careful because there were some ranged enemies, but thankfully some enemies do drop healing potions, which keeps me alive. And of course, after I defeat that wave of enemies, I get my shield, aka ward, which is pretty important, especially because of the next part that's about to happen. You see, normally you would shoot these explosive barrels, but the problem is I can't shoot them. I have to melee them. But of course, these are no ordinary barrels. Naturally, they are my arch nemesis, fire barrels. I thought I was dead to the fire dot for sure there, but thankfully I wasn't. I guess all of those points in Constitution really were worth it in the end. And now that I have a shield, surviving is a whole lot easier, even with more enemies. The baddie skeleton that spawns, kind of a mini-boss, isn't that difficult either. It's just his minions that were annoying, because they were shooting me the entire time. So I quickly dealt with them. Even though this game is a Borderlands spin-off, of course it has all the same mechanics from the other games, including one of the most powerful, called the circle strategy, where you just circle around an enemy in melee range and they can't really do much to you. It's hilarious. After defeating him, I got my action skill, which I'll explain a little bit earlier, and my first skill point, which will be going into a tiny bit of health regeneration, very handy, and my first hero point, which will be going into Constitution. I'm gonna max that out for health and shield first, and eventually, for my last points, I'll go into critical chance and critical damage, since those are the only ones that are useful to me. After some more enemies, the first boss of this run is Ribbula. Most of the time, he is a relatively easy fight, but in a lot of my runs, he's actually put up quite a challenge due to all sorts of my restrictions, of course. This run was especially interesting because, yeah, he was a very scary fight. He does a ridiculous amount of damage, which is normal. I have to dodge his shock pools all around him, and of course, I have to deal melee damage. That's kind of the biggest problem. Thankfully, the nice thing about this fight is that he constantly spawns minions, so I could maybe use them as second wins. They drop health potions, which is very nice, and of course there are some containers and piles around the map that also have healing. It was certainly an interesting first boss, and a great example of how a lot of the game is actually going to go. You'll see that soon enough how most enemies are stupidly easy, because melee is just dummy broken, but the bosses are rough, to say the least. Once we get into the overworld, there is one mandatory encounter that you have to do. Of course, this is a tutorial for it, but yeah, the enemies are still stupidly easy. My melee weapon isn't the best right now. You can see my damage kind of sucks. Leveling up absolutely helps that quite a bit. I can also increase my survivability after that, which is very nice. But it's obvious I'm going to need some sort of new melee weapon or skills to help get through the run a bit easier. Something I can do that's a tiny bit cheesy is actually go to Dreamvale Overlook real quick. Conveniently, I did manage to get a melee roll, which is pretty crazy considering all of the options, and the fact I got useless cosmetics as my first one, so that was a crazy cool roll. Unfortunately, no legendaries, even though it is technically possible, as I've showcased in my legendary only run, but still getting any new weapon is big at this point because, well, these are all blue and purples. Into the next major level, which is right before Bright Hoof, I am allowing myself to use my action skill in this run, and I was actually using it there to proc my passive ability. You know the issue? I was dumb and for quite a while completely forgot that I can't use my passive until I get to a certain part in the map. So yeah, you'll see me using my ability to proc Enrage, which gives me all sorts of buffs like attack speed and additional cryo damage. On top of that, it actually doubles the effects of a lot of my skills, including health regeneration, but yeah, I can't really use that for a little bit. But this cryo sword that I got from Dreamvale Overlook is doing absolute work. This is because in Wonderlands, there is a gray health bar on top of the yellow armor, red health, and blue shield. Gray is undead, and that's why you see it on skeletons and everything like that, and undead take less damage from stuff like fire, obviously shock. I'm not actually sure about corrosive, but probably less. Definitely less from dark magic. I'll get to that in a bit. But yeah, they take a ton of damage from cryo or frost, and that's why it's so powerful in here. The only real enemy of note for now is the rock troll. These guys are notoriously difficult, well, at least in some of my playthroughs. I forgot which one I was struggling in. I think it might have been unique only, where I actually discovered that they can regenerate health if you don't damage them enough. It's pretty ridiculous if you ask me. Even here, I'm struggling to kill this thing because of how much damage it deals. But he kind of like stopped attacking for a little bit, which is very convenient, I have to say. The rest of the level was relatively easy, mostly just slow having to get through with all the enemies. And of course, once you get Paladin Mike, well, it's a breeze because this is Wonderlands, which is after Borderlands 3, meaning that NPCs can actually revive us now. That is easily one of the best features they've added. It's extremely helpful, especially for a run like this. It's also at this point that I can really take advantage of the Enrage effect from my passive, which is very nice. And I'm still using the exact same sword this whole time, so yeah, nothing else has really changed. The most interesting thing to note about Bright Hoof itself, well, you can kind of see it here. Yeah, we've got wyverns. There aren't a ton in this level, but still, there's like 8 or more, maybe 9. Yeah, there are a bunch. And the primary issue with wyverns is, yeah, they fly. I mean, I shouldn't have to tell you why melee against flying enemies is such a horrible thing. However, Wonderlands is interesting because with melee weapons, you actually get sort of an aim lock. You kind of notice it sometimes when my character, like when my character goes towards an enemy to try and melee them, I get like a little dash, kind of. So it's something like that. Unfortunately, there's nothing like Borderlands 2's infinite vertical melee. I almost wish they kept that as a feature in all the games because it's just so useful sometimes. Anyways, the aim lock, whatever you want to call it, is extremely helpful when dealing with flying enemies because it'll give you some free hits when you normally wouldn't be able to hit them. Either that, or the wyverns do occasionally land, sometimes even do their crazy rolling and teleport attack. So yeah, they are a massive waste of time and very annoying to kill. But just you wait until later. This is one of the things I had already considered for this run, and it's gonna get very interesting at the end, to say the least. If you guys have played this game, you'll probably know what I'm talking about. In case you haven't, well, just wait and see how bad it gets. On to the next level, a very unfortunate series of events actually unfolded. So, I sold a bunch of my gear. and I didn't realize until later I had accidentally sold the class mod that it gives you because I was going to show the stats and everything. But yeah, so I got stuck because Butt Stallion happened to walk in the wrong direction. So that means I have to save and quit to the menu because I literally could not move. The issue with saving and quitting is that, well, great, I sold my class mod and I can't actually get it back. That really sucks because the bonus, which gives you more damage to zombie and skeletons, is kind of necessary here. On top of that, I couldn't actually melee Zomboss, so I had to use my action skill, which technically I think it is based off of your melee weapon, or something like that, I don't remember, but it is still, in a way, melee. You will get this a lot in the run where I have to use certain things because melee just can't. You'll see eventually. But yeah, long story short, I don't have a class mod. It really sucks because that's a really good one they give you to start. Oh well. There wasn't really anything interesting in the rest of the level because my damage still is pretty bad, I have to say, but at least my survivability is like half decent at this point. Health regeneration from my skill is very much carrying me, even though it's literally like 1.5 to 3%, which, yeah, that's not a whole lot, but it adds up over time. And of course, most enemies do drop healing. Zomboss is similar to Ribbula in terms of difficulty, but she does have a couple of attacks, but a couple of her attacks deal a ridiculous amount of damage, and considering my gear still is not the best, and I haven't farmed for anything, yeah, there were a few close calls in this fight, I have to say. It feels like my action skill is also a weakness sometimes, because I activate it, then try to deactivate it as quickly as possible, and the problem is once it's over, it takes like a couple seconds before I can use my melee again. That's one of the major issues with this entire playthrough, I have to say. I guess one thing I forgot to notice, that I only remember looking back at the footage, the melee I have right now is incredibly important. You see, melee weapons can all roll with a specific modifier, aka what happens when you hit an enemy with your melee. For the first few ones, I got the bad ones like action skill cooldown or spell cooldown. Those are worthless, but as you can see here, I actually have Vampire. Vampire is by miles the best melee modifier because it allows you to get, well, I don't know the percentage right now, I think it might be 5 to 6% health and shield every single time I hit an enemy, which is just insane, by the way. It goes up to 10% at max level, and yeah, pretty powerful. You can literally become invincible by the end of the game, as long as you're still hitting enemies. Melee in this game is just extremely overpowered. I'll say it several times. There's all sorts of benefits to it, all of its skills are insanely good, which I'll get to later. But the best part is not having to worry about ammo capacity. Now, ammo in this game is kind of a joke by itself. Everything drops it, you're almost never going to run out, but it's nice not having to worry about it at all in this case. As you might have noticed right before Hoof, I have been doing a ton of the side missions and encampments, all of these dungeons and stuff like that in the overworld. This is because I want as much XP as possible without having to do all of the side missions. That's kind of where I am now. I can actually go over to Mount Craw. It is a huge map, might actually be the largest in the game. I'm willing to bet, actually. And there are naturally a ton of side missions there, but honestly, I always feel like it's a drag having to go through the whole place, so I really don't want to. On the other hand, it does have a couple of unique melee weapons, so maybe I should have done that for this run. Oh well. Unfortunately, this entire journey led to my first death. This is one of the shrine pieces, I believe, and this one has an insanely difficult boss at the end. I feel like I've died to this boss in several runs, but it was one of the other enemies that managed to get me first, so that was quite unfortunate, I have to say. As a matter of fact, this boss was so difficult, like I just didn't have the damage and healing to kill this guy. I had to cheese him using the spike trap in the level. I hate to do this, I will admit, but it was pretty funny when he started kind of like flailing around. I've legitimately never seen this in Wonderlands before, and it was hilarious. so I'd say it's worth it. Plus, it's just a shrine piece, nothing like super good or special. I won't really be showing all of the melee weapons I get because a lot of them aren't crazy good, but occasionally I will find something super interesting. Vending machines in this game are amazing for finding new weapons. Well, at least in this playthrough, especially when I'm farming stuff later on. I really thought I was gonna buy something here, that's why I had it noted down, but no, I guess I just kept my old melee. This thing is still really good because it has, well, fire damage. Alright, there are a couple things to note. First of all, when I'm looking back at the footage, there's something really weird how some of the clips here have audio and then some don't. There's unfortunately nothing I can do about it now because it's all been recorded. I don't know why that happened though. That's a very bizarre thing because I almost always check my recording before I start it. You know, I test to make sure there's audio and everything like that. I guess when I don't, of course, I'm gonna have problems. That's just my luck. Anyways, I'm currently working on an obelisk. You just have to defeat a ton of enemies and then it spawns a super tough enemy. This obelisk is well known because I have farmed this thing a ridiculous amount, and the monstrous shroom can actually drop Ruby Spite, which is a really good weapon. The last thing to note is my skills. I haven't really shown it much. Of course, you guys have seen the healing skill I have. It's really not that good, but it's better than nothing. Then I've been putting a couple points in the middle skill for extra melee damage, which is obviously very important, and enrage duration, which is nice. Then, for the second tier, I've been going the middle skill. It's stupidly broken, by the way. You deal increased damage, and you take less damage the closer you are to enemies, which, synergizes perfectly with melee. I love that skill. Besides just doing side quests and everything like that to get a bunch of XP, the Weep Wilds wasn't extremely interesting. Well, at least this level was easy up until the Banshee. You know, I've never actually fought her with melee before, but I was thinking, how bad could it be? Apparently, it's pretty freaking bad. So, the primary issue with the Banshee is that she deals a ridiculous amount of damage. That's normally not an issue because you can just stay at range and shoot her. The big problem here, I can't do that. On top of her insane damage, she actually has a stupid area of effect damage always around her, which makes melee far more difficult than I initially expected. And yeah, that's the biggest problem with this fight. Of course, her little dodgy phase, that's nothing special at all. It's legitimately attacking her. The only savior so far is the fact that she spawns all of these skulls. Normally, they're super annoying and hit you around the map, which they still do. I hate these things, but they also drop a bunch of health and potentially act as a second wind. Unfortunately, that's one of the biggest issues with melee. Getting second winds is insanely difficult because, well, my range is pretty limited. But I have to say, this fight is not looking good in the slightest. I have to take very short trades with her to be able to do any damage and, not die horribly. In theory, I could have beaten her with enough patience, but I don't have any patience to spare. As you can see by the death counter, it was not going good at all, so I decided to head back to the overworld and start doing all sorts of other quests and camps to get a ton more XP. That's the only thing I was thinking of that could save me at this point. This dungeon normally isn't that difficult, but for some reason, I never knew that this mushroom can actually heal off of something. Like, as you guys can see, I cannot damage this thing. It's just healing infinitely. I don't know if this is a bug or if it melees you, if it's some sort of like poison damage or something. Needless to say, I physically cannot beat this encounter. However, you guys can probably see what's on the map there. Yeah, it's another spike trap. I'm gonna cheese the hell out of this thing. I do not care. If I can't kill it, I'll need to find some other way that isn't, like a gun or something like that. And the spikes are technically melee if you really think about it, so hey, it works in the end. Also, at this point, I still haven't really used my spell at all. It's literally the same spell that you get to start with, so trust me, it's not gonna make an impact even if I accidentally use it. I was hoping that the sword that I got from one of the side quests there would be way more helpful. However, I happened to find this in a random vending machine. I've never seen this thing before, but it's called the Vampire Bat, and it's a unique ring. Now, the ability damage doesn't really help, but that 25% damage and in this level is insane. Yeah, I think that's what I need to help me kill the Banshee for good. You see, damage is half of the reason the Banshee fight is going so bad. The higher my damage, obviously the faster I kill her. However, the higher my damage, the more I get healed for each swing, since I do have a melee weapon with the vampire ability. You can kind of see where this is all going. In theory, I should just be able to live infinitely if I can keep hitting her with my melee and I heal enough to actually kill her. And exactly as I thought, well, this is how the entire fight goes. I use my action skill to get enraged, which gives me all of the good buffs and makes me deal a bit more damage. Thanks to the vampire ability, I can heal just barely enough to sustain myself in this fight and actually kill Banshee without dying horribly. Yeah, that was a very interesting fight, and I'm kinda terrified for what's to come. I think that's definitely the major issue with melee. It's extremely powerful against normal enemies, but it is rough against bosses. Unfortunately, I didn't get any drops from the Banshee. I would have loved her legendary melee. However, you do get a rare version of it from completing this mission. It's pretty much the same melee, but the legendary thing fires 3 projectiles. The rare one only fires 1 when you hit an enemy, but still, I'll take either one. I'll take it. I may have forgotten to turn off the death counter for this cinematic. You guys still get the point. I took a screenshot. It is wonderful. I love blowing up the ocean. This is definitely the best part of the game. After that cinematic, we also get the ability to equip a second class. I was thinking about this for a while, and there are 2 really good synergies. Unfortunately, Clawbringer does give us a Wyvern Companion, which sucks because that's now like a ranged attack, but we can't really control it. And the other choice is Stabomancer, and I mean, everyone knows this, Stabomancer is just the most powerful class in the game, so I wanted to go with one I normally wouldn't use in Clawbringer, of course. Unfortunately, it's going to be a while before I get access to all those skills and start putting points in there. However, Clawbringer has insanely good melee skills. The top right skill gives me additional lightning damage on my melee, which is incredibly nice. It also allows me to deal, well, like lightning, cryo, and another element if I really want to, so that's very fun. Then, the skill below it, I believe, gives you a ton of damage reduction, which is insane by itself. It's also like, well, I don't actually remember what the skill is called, like Retribution, you know, Maya's skill in Borderlands 2, where some of the damage dealt to you goes back to the attacker, which is very nice. I love skills like that. And yeah, most of the other skills are useless, but those are the most important ones to note. There are all sorts of new places you can go, besides like the main map area, now that the ocean is gone, but there's actually a obelisk in the map right before Brighthoof, you know, the gate to it, and look at this. I got 2 legendary drops from this guy. Yeah, that is insane. Haven't seen a single legendary up until now, which is normal, but I get 2 weapons when I kill one of the obelisk enemies. I don't even have like good loot luck just yet. This is stupidly low. Even though I do have all of the loot dice, I collected all of them in a previous run, still, that was an insane find. I mean, I wish I could use either of those things, but yeah, I just wanted to say that's a crazy level of luck. And in a very common trend, I'm guessing that stole all of my luck from the rest of the run. That would actually make a lot of sense now. Those 2 legendaries, absolutely, and then this one. Besides just a legendary chest drop being insane, it's a White Rider, which is one of my favorite weapons in the game, mostly because it has like arcing projectiles where it can hit a bunch of enemies at once. I love these weapons. This and the live wire, those are like 2 of my favorite guns in this game easily. Oh yeah, the other major issue now that the ocean is gone, crabs. Most of the crabs aren't that bad, but there's cursed crabs, the evil eye crabs, those are horrible to deal with, but the coral crabs, these are like the worst enemies to deal with. Especially with my other builds, they're not that bad with melee because that's how you're supposed to take them out of their burrow, but with my gun builds, getting them out of burrow was so annoying, especially in the higher difficulties. But here, I mean, I'm hitting with melee either way, so yeah, I can't wait to face more of these things. Before I go into the next major level, I made a quick detour, well, not really quick, but it's one of my favorite maps in the entire game, Tanglewood Drift. I love it because, I mean, the colors in this place are incredible. I love the entire, like, giant beanstalk in the sky aesthetic. Yeah, very fun place overall. Unfortunately, it's also infested with wyverns, and we already know the issues with them. On top of that, the obelisk enemy of this area is also a wyvern, of course. But thankfully, it seems like the wyverns know when you're mostly using melee, and so a lot of them actually land to fight you, which is very convenient, so that made this a bit easier. Both my weapon and I am so powerful at this point that I'm not really afraid of dying. The only thing I was actually scared of is being knocked off the edge. I mean, you look at the map, you can die to like most of this map just by walking in the wrong spot. Besides that though, there wasn't really too much of note here. Throughout this entire run, I've been getting all sorts of auxiliary gear, like, you know, rings, amulets, and armor, which is class mods. Rings and amulets are like for other Borderlands players, and most of the time they don't really do much, especially at the lower levels here, but sometimes I'll get a bonus here, like my lightning damage, a little bit of my power, which doesn't really matter because power is mostly for action skill, but I just wanted to note that. I haven't ever found something like truly noteworthy that's going to make me super overpowered, except for that vampire bat ring earlier. That was something special for sure. Right before the final boss of this area, I actually managed to get a Kama, which is the fastest melee weapon in this game, and it had vampire on it. When you can get this combination, you are easily invincible, because of course the faster you attack, you proc vampire, you get healing. It's pretty stupid, I have to say. The one I've had for a while now, this one is also pretty decent because it gives me damage reduction and increased melee damage, and that stacks to about 30. I don't know what it is at max level, but if it's really like 60%, that is insane. I wonder how all the damage reduction like stacks, but vampire is always the way to go. Anyways, the parasite is never difficult. It's actually one of the easiest bosses in the game for sure, and considering I'm invincible as is, yeah, there was no struggle here. The next major level gets interesting because very early on in it, there's actually an obelisk, which is nice because both the boss and the challenge of completing the obelisk gives you a ton of XP. More importantly, I'm actually here because I want the drop of the boss. Unfortunately, it's going to take a very long time to get it because, well, you can see my situation. I'm not dealing much damage, and melee can hit multiple targets, but it's not the best at it. So, needless to say, I'm going to be here for quite a while. But of course, I didn't get the legendary I was looking for at first. Instead, Universal Soldier, which is worthless considering the stats are garbage. It's all gun stuff, and I don't have any gun to actually reload in the first place. Well, that's quite unfortunate. Thankfully, it didn't take too much more time to actually get what I was looking for, the salmon. This thing is pretty awesome and applies a stacking poison dot to enemies, so it's really good against armor and health, and just fun to use in general because the design of the weapon's ridiculous. On top of that, it's nice to finally have a legendary melee that does something cool. This level also has a part that I knew would be an issue, and of course, the big problem with melee. I can't hit anything at decent range. Well, I've said this, but I will tell you guys the solution near the end when I actually get it. Unfortunately, the melee weapons that can hit things far away are like end game. I don't think you can get them normally, without the Chaos Chamber at least. So, I do have one other option. That is actually my action skill, while on the Clawbringer side, it's literally, you know, Thor's hammer. It is a very fun skill, I have to say, and it makes activating Enrage extremely fast and easy. But yeah, that's what I have to use to strike that blimp there. It is a story mission, so it's required. Not much I can do about it not much I can do about it. And as we all know, LeChance, the boss of this level, is literally the easiest boss in the game. There's nothing even close, in my opinion. Even using poison against undead, which I don't think does that much damage. I'm not sure how that interaction works. Yeah, the fight is a complete joke. It's just way stupidly easy. I'm not really complaining though, because it's always nice to just like beat down a boss insanely quick like this. A bit later on in one of the encounters, I may have died to one of the clomps. This is because, of course, it's toxic, which means it resists my poison, which is most of my damage. I still have cryo and shock to kill it, but still, that was absolutely tragic. After that though, I got a really cool skill. It is on the second to last layer, and it maxes out at one point, but it essentially has a 20% chance to create a cryonova whenever you hit an enemy. It's a super powerful ability and gives me even more damage, on top of some crowd control, which is very nice. And after that, I just happened to get a new class mod that gives me some melee, all damage dealt, which is insane, and the best part, it adds one to that skill I was just talking about. So now I think it's a 40% chance for that cryo area of effect. It's pretty awesome. The rest of the level wasn't very eventful, of course, until the final boss of the whole place, Dryl. You see, this guy is a massive issue, because, well, he sits in this pool of void, or whatever that liquid is, that damages your health. And that's a major problem because, well, it kills you pretty fast. Thankfully, I have a ton of health thanks to one of my skills, which converts my shield into health. It's an amazing skill. I don't know why I removed it in the end when I swapped up my abilities, but anyways, that combined with a dark magic and vampire melee was pretty much the only way that I could get through this fight. Of course, a good portion of his second and third phases is just waiting him to actually get close enough to attack, because if I run anywhere out into that lake, I am very likely dead. I need to stay near land where I can jump out and get some healing. This fight is extremely high risk, but relatively high reward, especially considering I have no option but to fight him in the damaging void. I would still say that the Banshee is like the worst fight, okay, maybe second to worst fight in this run, because even though this is incredibly difficult, I at least have the survivability to fight him. The Banshee was a complete different kind of crazy. I made an incredibly risky play when he was low health. I thought for sure, I saw him super low, I knew I could have died, but I think it was worth it. That was a pretty cool moment. Unfortunately, I did die in his fire phase because I was being careless, but that didn't really matter in the end. Just one death to this fight. Not bad. His fire phase is pretty annoying though, because he spends a lot of time either in the far end of the map or submerging, coming up the left or right side, so you have to try and chase him. Yeah, I don't like waiting in fights like this. But overall, I would say the fight went pretty well. We all know it could have been way worse. The next area is also relatively easy. This level's mostly just zombies and skeletons, some coiled later on, so flesh. The only real worry I had was actually the quartz here, which you are supposed to shoot, but thankfully you can also melee them if you get close enough, so that was pretty nice. And everything so far has been going relatively well. I mean, up until this part. I got a bit too focused on killing this guy with melee, so I didn't actually realize where I was positioned, and may have walked off the map, slightly, you know, the usual. And that's pretty much the only problem with this map, because there are a ton of ways to fall off and die. Oh, and wyverns. There is one part, actually, I guess on both sides of the map it's covered in wyverns, but we know they're not that bad after all. I was working on all of the side quests, and honestly there wasn't anything too interesting that happened in any of these, but of course in the Dreadlord fight he just happened to drop a legendary, and thankfully I can use this one. It's the frying pan, which is decent. I got the warrior roll on it, so damage reduction and more melee damage, I'll take it. Plus poison is pretty good. As a legendary though, I don't think it's that good as like an actual melee weapon. If you're using it on other builds as a defensive item to take less damage from projectiles, then it's pretty good. But I'll take it. I'm not complaining. It's a pretty cool melee. The Wastard fight is generally pretty easy, and this run is no exception. I feel like the only time I've ever struggled with him is actually in my Chaos 100 run, and in that run, my gear was just absolutely horrible during this fight. I literally could not kill him until I decreased the difficulty. But I did have a couple of close calls in this fight. Thankfully, the Berserker has that one skill that increases your fight for your life duration when you keep hitting an enemy. It's a bit more difficult because melees are way slower, but it's still stupidly powerful. There is one other side quest you can do after completing this area, which gives you this melee. You see, it's super decent, I think. The main problem is that, well, I got no element on it, and I'm pretty sure it works best with an element, because that would give me double vampire for 17% shield and health, which is absolutely insane. You also get the full battery from completing that mission, which I always forget about. On top of that, one of the dungeons I completed in the overworld gave me another salmon. This is pretty insane. On top of just being powerful in general, it has vampire. So yeah, this thing is going to be stupidly powerful to say the least. It's insane that my loot luck is still so low, yet I keep getting all sorts of legendaries. This thing is absolute garbage. And it's only one of my 2 classes, but still, the fact that I'm getting legendaries non-stop is ridiculous. With this melee, the next level is just a complete breeze. At this point, I'm just so overpowered, absolutely nothing stands in my way, including the boss at the end, which I may have forgotten to record. I really thought I hit record before I started the fight, but I guess not. So yeah, there's that. But don't worry, you didn't really miss anything. It was honestly just a lot of waiting because it was a stupidly easy fight when I could damage him. It was mostly just waiting for him to actually teleport back into the arena. That's kind of like how all fights are at this point. I just need to get close and they stand no chance. It's way too easy. Melee is stupidly overpowered, I have to say. Before I head on to the last level, there is one more thing I wanted to do. You'll see by the insane jump in my levels, I'm working on farming. This time it's the Wastard, and I'm attempting to get his drop. Long story short, I thought the drop did different things. No, it's absolutely not what I'm looking for. But naturally, I managed to get like so many other things than what I actually wanted before that. In this case, it's a new sword. But it's hard to complain because this sword is actually stupidly powerful. Basically, it applies a random status effect when you hit an enemy, which makes it really good against everything. It kind of sucks that it doesn't have vampire, so survivability is a problem. However, it can deal dark magic damage, which gives you some healing. So it is a very interesting weapon, and I am glad I found it. That's definitely one of the best parts about this run, actually using melee weapons that I normally wouldn't touch because they are very good and fun. I just prefer gun builds. So the melee I was looking for was the Spell Blade, and I happened to get it eventually. Unfortunately, I should have read what it actually does. It's not what I thought. It's all about spells. I mean, go figure based on the name. I really thought it was one of the ranged melees, but yeah, it's not. So I just wasted countless hours farming this guy, and I got the wrong thing. Well, this is gonna get interesting to say the least. On the bright side, I did upgrade my gear quite a bit and get several levels. Considering this melee is made for spells to synergize like that, you can probably tell that it's pretty bad when I'm only using the starter spell. I mean, the damage is decent, but I have a feeling a lot of that is my build and extra lightning damage. I don't know if it's that good itself, but the enemies are still ridiculously easy. I'm pretty sure most of you don't realize just how stupidly broken this melee thing is until this fight. I mean, I am melting the Dragon Lord like crazy. I'm effective against his shield, armor, and health. It's just stupid. There's no other way to put it. Melee is just so ridiculously overpowered, and I absolutely love it. It honestly does make me want to play even more of this, because I am hoping to make a video of getting the Chaos 100 with only melee. You know, makes a lot of sense. But yeah, this is pretty awesome. And the Dragon Lord himself, absolute breeze. You see how quickly I killed him just there. But of course, the fight going so well does mean one terrible thing. It's gonna go horribly very soon. So, the main issue with the Dragon Lord's fight isn't actually the Dragon Lord. As a matter of fact, it's Bernadette that he spawns in his last phase. You see, the main issue is they take turns on who you can damage, and well, you see where Bernadette is? I literally cannot reach her. There is a barrier that prevents you from falling off the map until you jump. Long story short, this fight is literally impossible because of Bernadette. I had a feeling it was going to be, but yeah, that really sucks. She never goes into a attackable area, like in the middle of the arena. She always just hovers outside melee range, and it really sucks. So I can't beat the Dragon Lord. What is my plan then? Well, I had a couple of other ideas and I was looking at some other stuff. There is one more item I'd like to try and farm and see if it works. That was my main plan. My backup plan, well, I guess you'll see. My entire goal was to actually farm Banshee. Of course, I got so much other garbage before I actually got her melee. It was ridiculous. I forgot how many farms this was. It was like 40 or 50, something insane like that. But of course, in classic Borderlands fashion, this is the third fish I have gotten this run. Why I keep getting that melee? Who knows? It's just one of those runs. Cause guess what? That's not the only one. There is a fourth fish. Like, I almost can't believe it at this point, but you know, I'm used to crazy stuff like this. You just go ahead and look at my super old Borderlands videos, my fire barrel luck, then my True Vault Hunter scavenger run with like however many rabid enemies. Yeah, Borderlands luck is something else. As a matter of fact, I even got a spell blade, which I found hilarious considering how long it took me to get that. I quite literally have gotten every single thing but the drop I'm looking for. It's just ridiculous. All sorts of junk class mods, a couple of spells, no amulets or rings, I guess, but you get the point. And unfortunately, I had to farm her so many times that I actually reached level 40. That kind of sucks because that gives you your myth rank, which is like bar in the other games. Unfortunately, I can't really disable it, and I have a ton of points in this. On the bright side, I don't have that many points in the melee tree, which is nice, and a lot of my points are in melee swing speed, which is like my favorite stat. But yeah, that's an incredible boost to my power, so I'm even more powerful than before, if you can believe it. And I mean, the Dragon Lord fight, of course, isn't that difficult. It's legitimately just hitting Bernadette that is the main issue. But like I said, after however many, who knows, farms, I managed to get the Wailing Banshee. This is awesome. So, the reason I want to make the Wailing Banshee. In theory, if I can hit the Dragon Lord when he's close enough to Bernadette, the projectiles from this thing should go and seek her out to hopefully damage her. That was the entire plan, at least. But this is a perfect example of one of my favorite quotes. No plan survives implementation with first contact. That is to say, no matter how close I got the Dragon Lord to Bernadette, the Banshee's wail just didn't activate and launch projectiles towards her. Through all of the other enemies, yes, it would hit them, but no, I think she's just too far off the map, which is super unfortunate because this is like my only option to potentially deal damage. That is, of course, not using an action skill, so that really sucks. You see, my only other ranged melee options are the Ragnarok and Fatebreaker. Unfortunately, the Fatebreaker is a drop from the Chaos Chamber and of course the Dragon Lord. You know, catch-22, I have to kill the Dragon Lord to get it, but you know, I can't, so that really sucks. The Ragnarok, I'm 99% sure it's Chaos Chamber only. I don't think I've ever gotten one as a world drop. I mean, maybe there's a distinct possibility, but yeah, looks like you can't actually beat the game with melee only. I had a feeling this fight was gonna be the end, Borderlands, but I didn't expect it to actually play out that way. But if you see the duration of this video, we're definitely not done yet. I wanted to actually kill both of them so I could beat the game and, well, come back here to fight them with proper gear. So to deal with Bernadette, I decided to use the hammer, like the second skill of the Clawbringer, Thor's hammer essentially. I think this might be one of my favorite skills in the game. It is so insanely powerful and fun to use. But favorite skill, maybe third. I think my favorite is definitely the Bog Totems, and then second is the Blight Caller's second ability, the Storm. That's insanely fun too. This game does have some really fun abilities and skills. It just sucks that the DLCs are garbage and the end game is way too repetitive. I changed up my skill build a tiny bit, which I said earlier, I still regret it. I'm definitely going to change it back a tiny bit. I really just want that skill that converts shield to health because it's like 50% shield for 150% health. It's definitely worth it. I ran the Chaos Chamber a couple of times on the extended run so I could get a ton of crystals and so that I didn't start out the actual Chaos levels. I want to save that for another video. But as you can probably guess, it was stupidly easy. I mean, you guys have already seen how broken melee is throughout this entire run. It really shouldn't surprise you. The end of my first run was a little bit scary because I actually died 2 times trying to get side objectives. I swear, getting side objectives kills me all the time in Chaos runs. But the funniest thing, the first boss was actually LeChance. So it was free there easily. And then for my second run, the boss was Dryl, which isn't too bad because I'm practically invincible at this point. It was just a very long and annoying battle. The insane part is that I didn't even get the Ragnarok from the shrine shop at the end. I actually got it from a random enemy that dropped it. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. You would think that it'd be so much easier now that I have ranged melee weapons, but that's not particularly true. The Dragon Lord is still difficult, and, well, the ranged weapons kinda suck, to be honest. Yes, I may have died 2 times attempting to kill Bernadette. Alright, issues. The Fate Breaker, it's kinda garbage, honestly. The ranged projectiles are not that good, to say the least. And then we have the Ragnarok, which is super low range. I thought the projectiles would travel way faster, but I have to get very close to the edge to actually hit them onto Bernadette, which accounts for my other death. So that's a little embarrassing. But on my third attempt, I decided to finally just play it safe and slow using the Fate Breaker to deal damage from long range instead of falling off of the edge again. Overall, I would say this was a very interesting and quite fun run. I actually like melee in this game now. I'm generally not a fan of melee in gun games like this. Of course, you know, sword fighting games and stuff like that, those are stupidly fun, obviously. But in a Borderlands game, it feels weird. I think they did it really well in here, though. I love the builds. At some point, I absolutely want to continue this run and make it to Chaos 100. Of course, that's going to be its own separate video. I don't know how much of the Chaos Chamber I'm really going to record or how all of that's going to go, but I think it'll certainly be interesting. Well, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. A super special thank you to all of my channel members and supporters. It helps me out a ton. But anyways, this is going to be Enzo from Look Into Gaming, signing out.